Thank you, Randy, for asking me, and I want to welcome our newcomer and say happy birthday to the birthday people. I'd like to stick with what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I'll start with my sobriety date. It's February 6th, 1990. And I say that because it's a big part of my story as to what happened. So I'll stick with what it was like first. I grew up in Marina Del Rey in a middle-class family. Everything appeared to be normal. I was very tiny, and long before I had a drink or a drug, they are part of my story, I had that feeling of restless and irritable and discontent. I didn't know why, didn't know it was wrong. I knew I was small, and I was smaller than them, and, they were tall, and then you find out later they don't want to be tall, and you don't want to be small. But, nobody is ever happy, right? So, because I was so tiny and innocent looking, I chose to hang out with the older girls in my neighborhood. I wanted to be part of that. And so I like to say long before my drinking or using anything, I was people-pleasing and I would shoplift. That was my first vice. And so these the older kids in my neighborhood that I wanted to be part of would take me with them on the weekends, and we would go out to the mall or wherever we were going, and if they said, "This is nice," that was my cue. And because I was so little and looked innocent, it was easy until it wasn't. And we were talking on the way. I want to thank Carolyn and Mike for coming out with me. And we were talking about all the old TV shows and, how the TV and everything is different. And there was a show, The Waltons. And all I remember about this day, and this is dating myself, but if you remember the pantyhose and the eggs, the legs pantyhose. So we were in a Woolworths, and those looked nice. So that was my cue, and I was trying to stuff it in my purse, and I got caught. The only thing that came to my head was I was going to miss that very special episode of The Waltons. And we were trying to figure out, I have no idea what that episode was, but I know that's where my head went to. Not like I'm going to be in trouble. It's like I'm going to miss the Waltons. So I already had that, needing that outside sources and everything to make me feel better. So for some reason, they decided not to call my parents or anything, so we rode the bus home. But I still had all that anxiety and that feeling that somehow I was going to be in trouble. So I had an uncle. So like I said earlier, my family appeared to be normal. I had an uncle that was 2 months younger than me. So I thought, I would share with him what happened because he's my peer, he's my friend, he's my uncle, he's my brother, he was everything. And so I shared that. I got caught stealing, and that taught me then, don't tell anybody anything, because he blackmailed me with that information for most of my adolescence, and anything that I would get, my records, any babysitting money, he would take it because he was going to tell. And even though it was years later, I remember coming home, and we were supposed to be going on this big camping trip, and my mom asked me if there was something I wanted to tell her, and I swear it had to be at least 5 years earlier. And I said, no, I didn't have any idea what she was talking about. And so he told her for $10. So, he turned out to be a lifelong criminal later, but he told her for $10 that I had stolen. And, it was like I knocked off a bank. And so I didn't get to go camping. I didn't get to go do all that. So I paid my price. I also learned at that time, like I said, Don't tell anybody anything. Keep everything to yourself. Still have some of that today, in the sense only where I'm not telling until it's final. I work on that, but, I learned that. So that's where it all started, and then I would, still little, I was in the hospital at 13. They had all these tubes and everything, checking to see why I was so small, missing a hormone or whatever it was, and it was just I was small. And so I came home from that, but I was always different. I got picked last on all the sports teams. I was not an athlete. I didn't care, but you had to play. So I was always picked last, so that didn't feel good. So I started to escape from my home life, because I did not get along with my mother. She was very negative. And so I found ways early on to get out of that house. And that would be babysitting. And then I babysat to where I went to San Diego for a summer to babysit for my cousins that had a baby. But then that was like I was a prisoner, because the baby was in with me. But I did anything to get out of that household. I did not feel good there. I didn't belong to this day. I feel like the black sheep, even though I'm not. But I just wanted to escape, and I didn't have the means or know anything about alcohol or any of that yet. So that continued on, go to Oceanside, go to live with this girlfriend for the summer, just anything I could do to escape. And when I did that, I met this other girl in junior high, and I was a follower with her. We got in a lot of trouble, and I, like I said, did anything to stay away from my own house. So I would go with her, and it was so dysfunctional. My house was like Leave It to Beaver compared to her house, but I loved being there. I loved the dysfunction. We went to junior high together, and school let out at 3:00. And if we weren't home at her house at 4:45, all hell broke loose. So we would run and jog and, get there right at 3:45. And I would stay there. And the weekends included deep cleaning and, not allowed to go anywhere, but it wasn't at home. It was there, and it wasn't my life, and I could still leave it. But I enjoyed that darkness. I enjoyed the dysfunction, and it was very dysfunctional. So her parents would get into knockdown dragouts, and when he would leave, the mother would let us go places. But I told you it was dysfunctional, and I was a shoplifter, and Gigi was a shoplifter. So we would have to go and steal for her mother before we could go anywhere. And she'd give us a list, and we would go, we would go out, and I don't recommend it, but in this time, they had they were Save On. There's CVS now. They had Slurpees, and we would get big Slurpees and just stick everything in the Slurpee as we were walking through the store. So we did that, and then we were able to go maybe swimming or, some reward. And that went on for a long time, and we went to Target, and she got caught for her mother. And I remember her mother was telling us to do it. She got caught, and her mother went home and told her dad. And again, don't tell anybody, because you can't trust anybody. Keep your stuff to yourself. I mean, she got, in those days, he got hit, and she got hit, and, I was there, and I had to watch all this. But it didn't stop me. I was right back the next weekend. What are we going to do, for fun this time? So that went on, and in high school, she moved away. And I was devastated, because she was like my only friend. I was shy. I was very shy, very withdrawn, little. And see, I got a heel on right now. But I see you too. So when she moved away, I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I spent the night there on school nights. I spent the night there. She was allowed to stay home and I had to go to school. But I still wanted to be out of my house. So when she moved away, I didn't know what to do. And I lived in Marina Del Rey. She lived in Manhattan Beach. Not far, but to me, it was another world because I didn't drive and my mom wasn't taking me there. And we lost touch. And so I found a new group. And because I was little and wanted to be with the cool kids, I found the marijuana smokers. So I thought that was cool, and that lunch and nutrition, and I would go back to class. And luckily I never got caught for that. I would ditch school and do all of that, and I stayed out of trouble in school. Because I looked innocent, but I wasn't. And so that continued on. And then out of high school, I had a job that in the restaurant business, and that's a lot of drinking, lots of partying. And I felt like I arrived. We used to go to this house. I remember the first time. So when I took my first drink, it was to get drunk. It was not to sip and be a lady. It was for the effect. And it was hard liquor. It was Bacardi, and we did slammers. And I drank that, and we would meet every Wednesday because I loved that. As soon as that went over, that ease and comfort took over, and I was like this tall. I didn't worry. If I was little, I was one of the popular, no problem. Everything was great. Go to the store with them to get it. And when are we going to do this again? And I did that for a while, and I never got sick. And then one day, I was working at a real estate company, and we went to a restaurant. So here's some early on, some pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. I hadn't been drinking long, and we went to a place called Baja Cantina at the Venice Pier. And we were all there drinking kamikazes and Long Island iced teas because, like I said, I wanted hard liquor. I want to get right there. And so we're drinking, and one of the persons says, let's have shots. Okay, so I said, why not? Well, I had shots. They had 7-Up. So again, don't trust these people, right? So I vomited in the chip bucket at the restaurant. So here's some, embarrassment. Did I care? No, just take me home. Made me he had a brand new Mercedes. He made me wrap my head in a towel so that I didn't throw up in his car. And I went home, and I had the worst hangover, and I swore that would never happen again until about a week later. And in that job, a lot came with that. It was the 80s. 80s, you know what that means. Cocaine came into the picture, and I loved it. And when you're drinking and doing that, it goes on all night. I would literally stay up all night and go to work. And I don't know how I did it. I couldn't do that today, I don't think. But it would go on for weeks, and I had all the realtors and all the parties, and, it progressively got worse and worse and worse. And I lost that job, and then I lost the next job, and so forth, kept going on. But I learned how to lie, like really well. And I had excuses that things that came out of my mouth like that without a thought to get out of any situation, that just came to me. It just happened. It was not a problem. So I continued all of that. And slowly the other friendships were going away, and I was with this other crowd. And even the crowd that at the restaurant and the job were like, don't you think you want to go home and go to sleep? Don't you think, you should? But I didn't want to. I wanted to keep going. So all of that continued on. Things came along with that. And so about losing 4 or 5 jobs, I just decided, working probably wasn't for me, because it was just getting in the way of what I really wanted to do. But like I said, because I don't know where it came from, I zoomed in. We had ads at that time in the newspaper, and there was a job. And I was not qualified for this job. It was working for a president of a company in Santa Monica, and I just did what I knew to do best. I harassed, and I called that company every single day, 3-4 times a day, till he said, okay, come in. And I went in, and I couldn't tell you to this day how I got the job, but I did. And I liked it. It was fun. And it was about 8 days. Things that had happened before in the spiraling, I had loaned my car to somebody, and to this day, I don't know what happened. It came back as an accordion. And I drove that car to work. And I would pull up in this big, beautiful building, and everybody would see me, and I didn't care. And my car was it was a little Dodge Colt, and it was smashed, and I don't know what happened to this day. So, but I got that job. I wasn't driving it, I do know that. So I got this job. I went every day. I tried to stay sober. I thought, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to drink. And got about 8 days, and I thought, wow, maybe I'm making too much of this. I think I'm okay. So the 8th day, I leave work, and I'm driving to first the liquor store and then the other place. And as I'm going, I'm saying to myself, don't do this. You don't want to do this. As I'm getting out of the car, walking up, don't do it. And then I get that, and then go back in the car and go to the other one and tell myself, don't do it. And I do it. So started again. I made it to work the next day. Then it got to where I would leave that job at lunch. And he asked me one day, are you going behind a building at lunch? Because I would come back a totally different person than who I went in as. And I said, no, why? And, so eventually that job got in the way of what I really wanted to do. So again, working wasn't for me, a little too much. And I left that job. And then it was off and running. I would disappear. I lived at home at the time. And then I moved. I had a boyfriend. And then I moved and I lived with him. And, we went to drastic measures. The first time that I didn't come home, I'll never forget it. I was with some friends, and I just didn't go home. And I was like a little girl. I was petrified for a little bit. After the first time, you can do it again, But the first time, I was scared, and I went home, and I just said, we just fell asleep, and, it went okay. So that means the next time it's even easier. So that went on, and this person, he drank, but he, didn't want me to. It was okay if he did. And so he wanted me to be sober. And I could not drink, and I could not be sober. And then I couldn't stop doing the other stuff as well. So my bright idea was, hey, you know what? Lock me in here today when you go to work, and I'll be in the house all day. So about 20 minutes after he left, I broke the window to get out of the house because it wasn't going to keep me in there. I tried. The book tells us all the ways that we tried. Lock me in, lock me up, and it didn't work. So I continued on that path for a long time until he said, you can't be here, and he kicked me out in the middle of the night, and I thought, how dare he? How dare he? Doesn't he care about me? Kicking me out, and I had a bike, and I rode my bike to like the worst part of town to do whatever I needed to do, get what I wanted, and I couldn't believe that I was in that situation, and I stayed in that situation for a long time, and what happened was I went, he let me come back, and I was in there for a while, and it was an ultimatum. You either get sober or you can't be here. And I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing. So I tried, but, he was drinking, and I tried. I tried to do it, and but I didn't know about AA. I didn't know any of that. I was white-knuckling it, trying to do the best I could. And then I ended up in a motel room with this woman named Barbara. And I'll never forget it. I was in there, and we had been drinking and doing other stuff for a week. And this last day, she said, she tried to take what was left over, and she said, "You're going to have a black eye." And now, at that time, I was 71 pounds with a missing tooth in the front and this big, weaved blondish hair. And I said, maybe, but so are you. And I hit her. And she looked shocked, and I was definitely shocked. So she left, and I had a moment of clarity. I knew that wasn't the life for me. I didn't grow up like that. And although my mom tried to keep me secluded and sheltered, all of her brothers and sisters, my cousins, they were all in jail, crazy. People would knock at the door, and the first thing out of my mom's mouth would be, "Don't answer it." And we'd all be panic-stricken because it'd be one of her brothers or sisters getting out of jail, and she was the house that they would come to. So I was sheltered from that, and I always told myself that was never going to be me. I was never going to smoke. I was never going to do it. Well, I was a smoker. I was a drinker. I was doing everything else. So I might jump around just a little bit here, because when I was living, this is how our thinking. So when I was living at my mom's, she would sit at the table, drink coffee, and smoke cigarettes, and I could see her reflection in the refrigerator. So I would watch her reflection and then do what I was going to do. And then my heart would start pounding so bad that I thought I was having a heart attack. But rather than tell her that, I would go sit in the room with her so she could just see me. And then as soon as it subsided, I'd go do that again. So that was the insanity. Watch her through the refrigerator so she doesn't catch me. And so anyway, fast forward, I'm in that hotel room. My knuckles are bloody. I'm 71 pounds. And I'm going to go back. Sorry, before I'm jumping a little bit, but bear with me. So I got arrested. I forgot that. That's a big one. I got arrested. I was with somebody, and I went. And for this, I never drove drunk. I was considered myself a responsible alcoholic, drug addict. I would get a cab. I had a cab that would come pick me up because they wouldn't go to where I wanted them to go. So I found this one that would come. So one day when I went to go get something, he didn't have it, so we were going to go get it. And we pulled into the area in a Volvo, and we were taken out immediately. And the police came up to the car and took us out. And remember, I'm 71 pounds, skinny. And it was a female cop, and she was putting the handcuffs on me. And she was telling me not to make her break my arm. Don't slip out of the cuffs, because I could have. And they were singing to me, "Back to Life, Back to Reality." Do you know that song? And I was crying and begging them to, "I'll check in with you. I'll keep in touch." And they're like, "No, we have plenty of friends. You're going to jail." And I was crying. And I would wear 5 pairs of leggings and then a girl's size 10 jean over it to make me look like I had a little bit of weight, like I'm fooling anybody. So when they pulled in, this was at the Venice police station. They took me in, and they took me through the men's jail, and they started singing "Back to Life," and then the men were singing or saying, "Put her over here, and I was freaked out. And so she put me in there, and she said, she looked, she said, "Okay, there's nothing in here. Anything in here found is yours." I said, "Hold on." So I started inspecting the room. I'm handcuffed, and there was nothing there. And I was freezing, and I remember I had this sweatshirt, and I was trying to pull it up with my teeth, and I had these white leggings on with green shoelaces. And my mom and my boyfriend had always said, if you get arrested, don't call us. And I knew, don't call. So I sat there, and she came to me, and she said, this is how it's going to go down. She said, you're going to say that I saw something in your car, because I didn't know she wasn't allowed to search my stuff. I just wanted out. And so I did whatever she said, and then, of course, went to go get something to get what I needed. But that set on a whole, paranoia every time the helicopters were out, they were after me. Al Capone over here. So they went to my mom's looking for me, and my mom would never lie or stick up, but this time, for some reason, she lied, said I wasn't there, but she did drag me in the next day. And when I went in there, they had all the paraphernalia, and they gave me drug diversion. I said, oh, great. Well, of course, I never went. Couldn't be bothered. AA meetings and drug diversion, and couldn't care less. Went about my thing. So that is when the bottom started spiraling out. I'm in the motel room. So about 11 months, I did that paranoia of they're coming for me. And so then the hotel room happened, and she left after I socked her. And I knew my dad got up at 4:30 in the morning, and I used to see these commercials about Charter Hospital. And I think that's where I need to go. I need to go there, and I need a psychiatrist. So I called my dad at 4:30 in the morning, and he said, okay, find a place. So again, I didn't know about AA. I just started calling this hospital treatment. They were a treatment. They were a hospital, but they had a treatment center in there. So I started calling at about 5 in the morning. And the nurse's name was Barbara. And I would call her, oh, by the way, I went by the name of Cindy. I wasn't Deborah. I also had an alias. So I would call her, and I'd say, do you have room for me? And she said yes. And I said, okay. Do you need to call the police because there's drugs involved? And she said, no. You can just come in. And I said, okay, well, I'll check back with you. So I would call her again. Do you still have the bed? Yes. Okay, are you sure you don't have to call the police? No. Just come in. Okay, I'll call you in an hour. And I would watch the clock, and I would call her every hour. And this went on from 5 in the morning till 5 in the evening. And when I finally got there, when I called my mom to come get me, I would like to say that was February 5th, 1990, and she picked me up, and when she took me, the nurse said, you're the most responsible alcoholic that I ever had known, because I called at the exact time that I was supposed to. And but when I got there, February 5th, 1990, remember I said my date's February 6th, I still, using my manipulative ways, I hand her my marijuana pipe, my little thing, and she takes me in, and I proceeded to use that night. So my date was February 6, 1990. So I'll get sober. That day I went to 28 days. I have not had to drink or use since. That's not part of my story. However, I did let the life that AA gave me really take over and rest on my laurels. I went to meetings. When I first got sober, I went to meetings every single day for probably 10 years. I had a sponsor. Did I really work the steps? Here and there a little bit. And then I got married, and I had a son, and I had this life that Alcoholics Anonymous gave me. And I rested on those little bit of laurels that I had. So I, at 24 years sober, and if you're new, this isn't how to do it. At 24 years sober, I had an emotional bottom, and I didn't want to live. That was a new feeling for me. So I was driving home. I commuted from LA to Bakersfield, and I was driving and I was talking to God the whole time. And I was crying and I was begging him. And when I got to Bakersfield, I went into the market and there was a woman and she was looking at me and I was looking at her, and she blocked me in with her shopping cart. She said, "I'm going to tell you something and you may get mad." And I said, "Okay." She said, "You have God all over you." I go, "Oh." She goes, "And he heard you, and you're going to be okay. He's going to take care of it." She said, "I don't know why. He just told me to tell you." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And I ran to my car and I called a woman that I knew if I made that phone call that I would have to do exactly what she told me to do. She was little like me, little New Jersey girl. I called her. I said, "I'm dying and I need help." And she said, "Okay, and you're going to do every effing thing I tell you to do." And I said, "Yes." And I had all the desperation of a newcomer, and she treated me like a newcomer. And I was 24 years sober, and I was in my 50s. And I did everything that that woman told me to do. And she took me through those steps, line by line, looking up every word, just like a newcomer. I met her wherever she told me to meet her, in a parking lot, at Ralph's Market, in a conference room. The only consistency was 7 o'clock on Mondays, not 6:59 and not 7:01. And wherever she told me to meet, that's where I was. So from that day, I don't rest on my laurels. I have a very structured program. I have lost a job. I've reinvented myself numerous times. But what I can tell you is God has been everything for me. He does not ever let me down, even in those situations when I did my step 2 and saw where God had been with me all the time. I was the one that was gone. I came in here not having any God. I was lucky. I wanted God. You know, people come in here and have a prejudice against God. I didn't. I wanted him, and he came to me. It tells us that in the book, that he doesn't make too hard of terms with those who honestly seek. And I end my prayers today with, "I'm honestly seeking." And, you know, I talk to God all day long. "Thy will be done, not mine," no matter what it is. And half the time, it's not what I want, but I'm in acceptance. And I trust that no matter what. So today, that sponsor had to move away, and I was crushed. It hit me more than the loss of a marriage, job. I felt like a fraud. I was sponsoring all these women. She told me after my 12th step that I better not come back. I had 2 weeks to get a sponsee because I had taken enough from the program, and it was time to give. So I came back with a sponsee, and now I have several, and they have a very structured program, and they have sponsees. And so for the first time today, I have grand sponsees, and that is amazing to watch somebody that you work with somebody, and the lights come on. How am I doing? Yeah. So today, you know, I have a program. I stay in this. I put my steps into practical application. I am very structured. Randy knows me very well. I get teased about it. But you know what? At 24, I don't ever want to feel, I don't wish that on anybody. It talks about in the book that at certain times we will have no mental defense, and thank God that I didn't relapse. And so if you're new, get a sponsor, do whatever they tell you to do, whether you agree or not. You know, I love chapter 5, rarely have we seen a person fail, who has thoroughly followed our path. I followed her path, and I take them down my path, and that's all I can do. So if you're new, get a sponsor, listen. If you're sitting here complacent, resting on your laurels, get with your sponsor. You don't have to be alone and feel restless, irritable, and discontent. Thank you.